In the aftermath of a brutal battle, Conan, king of Aquilonia, stands alone against his enemies. Despite being vastly outnumbered, he fights valiantly but ultimately falls to the cunning of Tsothalanti, a powerful wizard. Tsotha uses a ring steeped in the juice of the purple lotus to paralyze Conan, rendering him helpless. The kings, Strabonus and Amalris, capture Conan and plan to take him to Korshemish, the capital of Strabonus. As they journey, Conan's mind seethes with anger and betrayal, replaying the events that led to his defeat. He had come to Ophir to aid Amalris against Strabonus, but was instead ambushed by the two kings and their armies. Now, weighed down by chains, Conan's fury and frustration simmer as he is taken to the castle of Tsotha, a foreboding citadel that dominates the city of Korshemish. In the city of the Queen of the South, King Conan, a mighty warrior, was captured and brought before his conquerors, Strabonus and Amalris, in a grand citadel. Conan, once a powerful ruler, was now a prisoner, stripped of his armor and thrown into a chariot like a slave. Despite his captivity, Conan's fierce spirit remained unbroken. In a lavish chamber, Conan faced his captors, surrounded by black giants and opulent decorations. Tsotha, a cunning wizard, proposed a deal. Conan would sign an abdication in favor of Prince Arpello of Pelia, and in return he would receive arms, a horse, and 5,000 golden lunas. However, Conan refused, calling out the hypocrisy of his captors and their own questionable claims to power. As tensions escalated, Amalris attacked Conan, but Tsotha intervened, using magic to temporarily blind the king of Ophir. Conan was then led away, deep into the citadel's dungeons, where he was chained to a stone wall. Tsotha taunted him, promising to return in 10 days to claim Conan's palace and women. In the dark pits of Tsotha's halls of horror, Conan, the king, was trapped in massive chains. He cursed his refusal of Tsotha's offer, knowing he was doomed. The wizard's last threat echoed in his mind, and he envisioned the horrors that awaited him. Suddenly, a soft rustling sound filled the air, and a colossal snake emerged from the darkness. Its yellow eyes burned into Conan's, and he fought the urge to attack it. Just as the snake was about to strike, the outer door clanged open, and a gigantic black man, Amra's old enemy, entered. He offered Conan the keys to his chains in exchange for a blood price, the king's head. As the black man gloated, a horrific form swayed in the darkness behind him. The snake struck, killing the black man, and Conan seized the opportunity to grab the keys and free himself. With the sword in hand, Conan turned to face the open door, only to find it slammed shut by Shukeli, the eunuch, who had followed the stolen keys. Enraged, Conan struck through the bars, killing Shukeli with a death scream. In the dark corridors of Tsotha's lair, Conan, the king of Aquilonia, fought for survival. After killing a fat eunuch, he found himself trapped, with no way to escape. He discovered a torch and began to explore the tunnels, searching for a way out. Suddenly, he heard a woman weeping and followed the sound to a horrific creature, a jelly-like monstrosity with a frog-like head. Conan fled in horror, realizing that his sword might not be effective against such a creature. As he navigated the tunnels, he encountered more terrifying beings, including a presence that seemed to hover in the air, mouthing obscenities. He fought off the unseen entity with his sword and continued his search for escape. The tunnels were filled with strange noises, titterings, howls, and laughter, and Conan caught glimpses of shadowy forms lurking in the darkness. Eventually, he came face to face with a massive serpent, which he knew was the least of his horrors. He followed the snake, using it as a guide to navigate the tunnels. Along the way, he discovered a cell containing a man bound by a thick, unnatural vine with crimson blossoms. The vine seemed to be alive, caressing the man's flesh with lustful kisses. Conan freed the man by cutting through the vine's stem, and the two of them stood together, ready to face whatever horrors lay ahead. Conan was amazed as the expressionless face of a stranger transformed into a living being with dark, intelligent eyes. The man, Pelias, was aristocratic in appearance and spoke Gothic. He asked Conan who he was, and Conan introduced himself as the king of Aquilonia. Pelias revealed that he was a sorcerer who had been trapped for 10 years by Tsothalanti, a rival sorcerer. Pelias had been kept alive in a state of mental emptiness, with his powers suppressed by a devil flower called Yothka. As Pelias regained his strength, he sensed a great battle and a king trapped by treachery. He saw Tsothalanti riding towards the Tiber with Strabonus and the king of Ophir. Pelias needed time to recover his powers and asked Conan to help him escape the tunnels. They encountered a giant snake, Satha, which was one of Tsotha's pets. Pelias revealed that Tsotha had not dug the tunnels but had discovered them when the city was founded 3,000 years ago. As they navigated the tunnels, they came across the body of Shukeli, a eunuch who had been skinned alive by Tsotha. Pelias used his magic to bring Shukeli back to life, and the eunuch opened the door to the grill. Conan was horrified as Shukeli's corpse slumped against the grate. Pelias led the way out of the tunnels, and they entered a gold-domed chamber, where Pelias poured himself a goblet of wine. Conan was concerned about their safety, but Pelias assured him that they were safe for the moment. He offered to show Conan how fortune held with Strabonus, and Conan's eyes burned with a desire for revenge. In the midst of turmoil, King Conan of Aquilonia sought guidance from Pelias, a wise sorcerer. Using Tsotha's crystal, Pelias showed Conan visions of his kingdom in peril. Shamir, a walled town, was under siege, and his capital, Tamir, was in chaos. The people, believing Conan to be dead, had turned to Prince Arpello of Pelia for protection, unaware of his true intentions. Conan was enraged, knowing he couldn't reach Shamir in time to save it, and that Arpello would hand the kingdom over to Strabonus, their enemy. Pelias, sensing Conan's desperation, revealed a solution. He summoned a giant bat-like creature, which would carry Conan to Tamir by dawn. As Conan rode the creature, Pelias remained behind, promising to meet him in the plain by Shamir. Meanwhile, in Tamir, Count Trocero struggled to maintain order, but the people, fueled by fear and misinformation, turned against him. Prince Arpello seized the opportunity, proclaiming himself king and imposing harsh taxes on the merchants. The people soon realized their mistake, but it was too late. Athamides was smuggled out of the city to plead with Trocero to retake Tamir and march to aid Shamir. Trocero was breaking his camp outside the walls, ready to march to Poitain. Meanwhile, the mob still raved in the city, screaming their hate at Arpello, who stood on the turrets and laughed down at them. Suddenly, a flying shape appeared over the walls of Tamir, and from between its wings sprang a human form, Conan, the king. Arpello stood transfixed, then drew and leaped at Conan, but was hurled far out to fall through empty space. In Shamir, the defenders knew they would not see the sun rise again. Strabonus had sent his light riders to ravage the country, and had reared up his siege engines in the plain. Just as the attackers were massing for a storm, a bugle call cut the din, and the Spahis who had been laying waste the countryside rode into view, followed by mailed horsemen with the great lion banner of Aquilonia. The people of Shamir shouted with joy, and Strabonus, Amalris, and Tsotha were shocked to see King Conan riding beneath the billowing silken folds of the great banner. Conan, with 1,900 armored horsemen and 9,000 infantry, prepared to face Arbenus' vast army of Shemitish archers, Kothian spearmen, and mailed knights. The battle began with a hail of arrows, but the western archers held their ground, taking down the Shemites and breaking their ranks. The Kothian spearmen, without archer support, were cut down by the pikemen. Strabonus, enraged, ordered a general charge, but his infantry was repulsed, and his knights were decimated by the Bossonians' arrows. Conan's knights then charged, breaking through the enemy lines and sending them into confusion. Amalris fell, and Strabonus was killed by Conan himself. The defenders of Shamir made a sortie, burning the invaders' tents and destroying their siege engines, causing the enemy to flee. The fugitives were cut down as they ran, and those who reached the river were slaughtered or drowned. Only a few hundred of Conan's knights survived, but the enemy army was annihilated. Tsotha, a wizard, escaped across the river, pursued by Conan, who finally caught up with him and beheaded him after a fierce battle. Conan faced a terrifying sight: Tsotha's headless body, with mad black eyes still glaring, lips writhing, and hands groping. Suddenly an eagle swooped down, snatched the severed head, and flew away, laughing in the voice of Pelias the sorcerer. The headless body rose, stumbling away with outstretched hands. Conan was frozen in shock, watching until the figure disappeared into the dusk. He cursed the wizardly feuds, wanting a simple sword fight instead. All he desired was a flagon of wine.